The mall, a staple in the American pastime since the mid-20th century. Though some still thrive today in all their retail glory, others have fallen to the rise of our technology. So grab a hot pretzel and find a hard bench on which to relax, underneath a beautiful enclosed facade. And join me as we discuss the history of malls. Hello, and welcome to this episode of The History of Malls. I'm your host, Sean, and in tonight's episode, we will be discussing a mall close to my heart in the Serramonte Mall. So before we get into this, I do need to explain a couple of things. I'm sorry I cover more California malls than any other place. I'm not trying to show favorites, but I am from California. A couple of them have been requests from listeners. And I also have another podcast called California True Crime. And for some reason, the last couple of cases we did the research on have been about malls. I promise I'm not trying to show favorites, and I will get more around the country soon. Also, if you want to check out the episode of California True Crime, it's the episode about Denise Lampy, not for the lighthearted and not around kids, but if you're into that thing. So the Serramonte Mall is located in Daly City, California. I used to live in Daly City and also worked very close to this mall, so I would go there a lot. The mall didn't actually open until September 12th, 1968, even though some of the bigger anchors opened about a month before. Also, the mall will be called either Serramonte Mall, Serramonte Shopping Center, Serramonte Center. It all just has different names. I can find articles going back all the way to 1966 about it. In January of 66, they talked about Macy's signing a lease at the mall that is going to be built on the old Christian Dairy Ranch. This is an earlier mall to open than we've talked about, like some that opened in the 80s or even the 90s. So I was kind of excited to see what the festivities are at the birth of this mall. This is always my favorite part of the research. If I can't find any things on opening of certain malls, I usually skip it. In the article I found from the San Francisco Examiner, the first two sentences are just beautiful. It states, "There are tinkling fountains and tinkling cash registers, bubbly champagne, soft music, and carpets." To me, soft music and carpets is just heaven. That's like the greatest thing. I relax very well at a mall like that. On this opening day, this one-story, $20 million mall had Macy's, Montgomery Ward, a Ruse Atkins, and an actual QFI supermarket. There were roughly about 60 to 70 total other shops there also. This was another mall that was being marketed as fully air-conditioned also. In the middle of the mall was a waterfall that was 40 feet high, going into a little splash pool that had all these lights to make it quite a show. In an article I found a couple months later, this fountain is actually named Fountain of the Rainbow Waters. Also in this article, it boasts about its, quote, rest pavilions throughout the mall, which are furnished with, quote, comfort contoured lounges. I don't know why, but immediately I thought about this tiny smoking room that was in my old bowling alley. It was just this tiny room with wooden benches and an extremely loud suction fan to get all the smoke out. That's just what I picture when I hear comfort contour lounges, those hard wooden benches. There was parking for 5,200 cars, and this mall got their own weird description of how to explain parking. In the Times from San Mateo, they said the amount of parking spots is room for 19.7 miles of cars if parked bumper to bumper. I found an ad in the paper for Kinder Photo International that I thought was interesting, showing the times how they were in the 60s. For one thing, the ad was in the section that was just titled Help Wanted Female, and the actual ad started in bold capital letters: Young ladies 19 to 25 earn while learning a career with good income. Then the description says, earn while learning a rewarding and exciting career as an expert baby photographer in the Serramonte Shopping Center in Daly City. Traveling jobs are also available. Must be of highest moral character with neat personal appearance. I very much like how this is considered a career. Yeah, I have a master's in expert baby photography. I also have a BA in highest moral characters while minoring in neat personal appearance. The resume you needed back then, not the same. I found an interesting article right off the bat of the mall opening that charges against the Montgomery Ward were brought for race bias. A man named Edward Eastman, who was the president of the Community Interaction Through You organization, said stronger measures would be met if the company didn't, quote, cease and desist its discriminatory practices by immediately hiring non-Caucasian personnel in other than mental jobs. Which seems like a weird description to use the word mental jobs in the context, but I looked things up and I think what it means is that white people are getting the mental jobs as opposed to having to do physical or manual labor. Also, the next article after this one says, quote, 3 knives found on jailed man, which is just a rad article title. So we have some years to cover, so let's get through some of the stuff that made the headlines at this mall. It's interesting that if you do a search for Serramonte Mall, I mainly just get ads and hiring ads from one piano and organ store in the mall called Golden Gate Piano and Organ. But if I do a search for Serramonte Shopping Center, so much more comes up. In 1974, there was an exciting scouting showcase at the mall. You had scouts telling scouting stories with camping displays, gold panning demonstrations, craft exhibits. Cub Scouts will go into life-size puppets and put on plays, and there's even some first aid and cooking demonstrations. Also, from all the articles I'm finding, just in general, the mall parking lot was a little scary in the 70s. I would not want to be there alone. Here's a story that has like 7 degrees of separation, Serramonte Mall style, or at least the parking lot. I think the Serramonte parking lot has more stories than the mall, actually. But anyways, on August 15th, 1980, a man named George Manuel Bosque, who worked for Brink's Guard, was able to steal 2 bags of unmarked bills worth $1.85 million, which today would be $5.8 million. I guess he convinced a coworker to let him take the armored truck for a little spin. He took it, then robbed a woman at gunpoint at an airport hotel and stole her car, then drove to the Serramonte Mall where he left the car and vanished with the money he took from the truck, and they couldn't find him at all. It took over a year for him to be arrested, where in that time, he went on a spending spree, and he also financed and produced one of the most costly gay pornography films of all time, Centurions of Rome. When he did plead guilty, his guilty plea was accepted by none other than Robert Mueller of Robert Mueller fame. So I thought that was a very interesting story, even though it was just the parking lot. Also in 1980, there were talks about an expansion to the mall. Lots of articles of this expansion, which goes on over years. What was proposed was making the mall the biggest mall in the Bay Area with some really fascinating things to add to the mall. Not only making the mall bigger for more stores, but also things included in this expansion would be a cultural center, offices, health club, an ice skating rink, restaurants, a parking garage, and the real kicker, a 500-room hotel and some condos. Now, I don't think the hotel room or condos would be like above hot dog on a stick or anything. It would be built in the premises of the mall. This plan would take 7 years to complete if it went through. In April of 1980, it looks like people wanted it, and on December, it was up for city review for the first phase. Almost a whole year later, it was announced that remodeling would be postponed by a whole year again because of high interest rates on loans that would be passed on to merchants. After this article, I found no more on the topic at all, and there was never anything that it was built on at the time. It would have been pretty awesome if all that stuff was there, though. For Valentine's Day in 1985, the Serramonte Mall teamed up with Hot Hits FM 105 to do a drawing for either 40 Hot Hits valuable Valentine gift kits, which is a lot. It's a long sentence which doesn't describe what the kits are, or the grand prize of a cruise for 2 to Mexico. No purchase necessary. You just need to come to any of the stores in the mall and register. One of these stores you could register at, I kept seeing a job ad for also. The job requires you to be energetic, enthusiastic, and like working with the public. This store is a Christmas delight for anyone who has been to the mall, and this will be our featured store for the week, which will be Hickory Farms. Who doesn't love a beef log, right? I mean, I'm recording this the day after Christmas, and I got a beef log in my stocking from Hickory Farms. You think I'm lying for ratings? I will post a picture of my hand holding a Hickory Farms log in front of a Christmas tree. So I'm going right off their website that has this little timeline and pictures that is extremely hard to read because you can't enhance the pictures. But in 1951, Richard Ransom founded Hickory Farms after already selling handcrafted cheeses at local fairs such as flower shows and boat shows. Only 5 years later is when the world was introduced to the original beef stick in 1956. Like I said before, I got it, and this has been a staple in my family growing up. Every Christmas, someone would get a beef log that we would eat. You know, I think one time we got a huge one, and it was even wrapped and put under the Christmas tree. That's how important Hickory Farm was in my family. It wasn't until 1959 that Hickory Farms had its first standalone store, and that was in Toledo, Ohio. In 1980, Richard Ransom actually sold the company for $41 million. By 1981, they had over 1,000 stores or seasonal pop-ups in the United States and in Canada. Now, I remember in my mall, we had a store for a while, but as I grew up, it turned into a kiosk in the middle of the mall. It was in the year 2000 that the company decided to close all permanent stores and just go internet and catalog ordering, and then these pop-ups during holidays. So in the stores, the employees wouldn't ask if you wanted to try a sample of meat or cheese. They would just cut a piece and stick it in front of you. This was a big selling point where people either loved it, so they wanted to buy it, or they just felt very obligated because they're like, oh, I ate a sample. Now I have to buy it. I'm in this store. Richard Ransom passed away at the age of 96 on April 11th, 2016. So, I mean, for a man to live until 96 who owned Hickory Farms is awesome. He either lived his life chomping down on his own cheeses and meats, like I want to live my life, or he had like that drug dealer motto where you never test your own goods. But I hope it was the first one, because I'm just going to start only living off a diet of beef log and smoked Gouda. I went to their website and I was a little sad because almost everything was sold out. I don't know if this is like plants are down because of COVID, or like it's the whole yeast thing or whatever, like COVID, where everyone's like, hey, I need some Hickory Farms beef and cheese, so I'm going to buy it all. They did have beef logs for sale on Amazon, which for some reason it weirds me out. It was from Hickory Farms Amazon account, but it's still, I have no clue why, but it freaked me out that I was going to buy it from Amazon? What if it just gets mixed up and I'm buying like this weird beef log from the account Timmy9775 or like some used bookstore in Delaware? It scares me buying food on Amazon. That's just me. So back to the Serramonte Mall. At Christmas time in 1995, you could go to Camp Santa, but I didn't think you met Santa, but you would do a meet and greet with Ambi the Clown and Jackson. Those are two of my favorite Christmas characters, Ambi and Jackson. I read that in 1995, the mall was updated, but I could not find any actual information about this update. In 2015, they did another update to the mall with a 200,000 square foot expansion. One thing we didn't talk about in this mall is that it has a turtle and koi pond. I always liked going by this and seeing the turtles and koi fish. I found a couple articles of a little over a year ago of people starting petitions to get rid of it because of animal cruelty. They said there was just trash and old coins floating in the water, and they've even seen kids trying to kick turtles, or they're throwing coins at the fish. And there's nobody there watching to make sure this doesn't happen. In my experience, I do not remember any trash, but I did see coins. I never saw anyone trying to hurt or harm the turtles or koi fish. So right now, it looks like they are doing some renovations to the mall. Things you have there at the moment are Macy's, Target, Dick's Sporting Goods, and a Dave & Buster's are anchoring the ends. Other things around the mall or in it are Ross, Old Navy, H&M, normal staples like Sunglass Hut and Mrs. Fields. It seems like a normal mall. One thing I will mention here is that with all the research, I can't believe how much crime can be linked to this mall or parking lot. Like I noticed it before when I was writing that in the 70s, but it seemed to just keep going. A lot of times I see none or at tops 2 articles of something horrible that happened at a mall, but this seemed like there was 4 or 5 every decade it's been open. With that said, it won't stop me from going to this mall. I have great memories of going with coworkers after a hard day at work to the Elephant Bar there when it was open at the mall, then heading through the mall after and checking out the koi pond. Hopefully, as that little dimmer is starting to make the future brighter as it goes up, I'll be able to cruise through this mall and get some steps in and enjoy the fish again. If you have any good memories from Serramonte Mall, I would love to hear about them. You can write me at historyofmalls@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at historyofmalls. I will be getting to something to not California next time. For tonight's song, we have the 2 Crude remix of My Last Name by Boy on Guitar. Thank you, everyone, and hope to hear from you soon.